was, do you want to work in the concession stands? Now, for those of you who have been band parents, you know what I'm talking about. For those of you who do not, you should come. It's always a good time. And there will be plenty of cheese dispensed with nachos with or without the peppers, chili dogs, hot dogs, Chick-fil-A sandwiches aplenty, all this sort of thing. Now, why in the world on a Friday night when I did not have a ministry commitment would I do this? Well, two reasons. One reason is that you actually bank some money for your kids' band situation. So there's that. But there's a far more practical reason for me than even that. It's a place where I get to meet people. It's a place where I am able to see people that I've either met at the coffee house. I saw Ron there this Friday evening. He's a guy that I've met there who I also see over at the National Fitness Center. I see all sorts of people while we're working in the window there. And the reason that's important is because every single church, and especially every single pastor, must excel in welcoming people. And that's part of what Paul's getting at here. That's the bottom line here. Because we have been talking over the last few months as a session, what kind of church is God calling us to be? He's calling us to be a spiritual community, receiving and imparting God's blessings to the people of Maryville, Blount County, and beyond. Now, that last bit, the people, that was Glenn Frisco's insertion. As we were going through this process, he said, it's got to be about the people. And he was absolutely right, because if we don't make what we're doing about the people, then we've missed out on so much. Because why did Jesus come? Did Jesus come so he might start this international enterprise where people would have buildings and they'd have chicken potluck dinners? Is that why he did this? Did he do it so that we'd have an excuse to play for the pastor to play his electric bass? No, that's not why we have the church. It's not there for buildings. It's not there for programs. It's not even there for potluck dinners. Although that's nice. That's a bonus. Jesus said that I came to save the lost. The lost what? People. That's what church is about. That's what we're about. And can I just tell you something? I mean, we've got the camera going. Hi, folks. Welcome to the window. But that's all it can be, is a window. Because church is an embodied affair. Can I say it? Can I say that out loud? Now, I am totally in the belief that we should continue to offer a glimpse into our services online, and we will continue to do so. But what we are experiencing right now is at least 4 times better than what people can get online. And I have the numbers to prove it. Because the Word of God is heard 4 times longer here than online. That there are certain things that we can't download. You can't download those moments when I get a nod from Juanita. And those moments when I get a grimace from Christine. You know, and the thing is, even through the mask, I can see Christine's personality. It can't be contained by that mask. And that's part of what I love. And, and I could go through each one of us here and talk about how you're precious to me and how you have made my life richer. Okay, I could go through each one of this. And that's in effect what Paul's doing. Now, this seems weird because Paul supposedly has never been to this church, right? How in the world does he know all these people? Well, because Paul's been around, and because Paul realizes that relationships with people is what church, it's so much of what it's about. You can have all the right music, you can have all the right programs, you can have an absolutely resplendent sanctuary and building and all that sort of stuff. You can have all the right vision statements and all those things. Those things are good. Those are not bad things. But that's not what makes people stay at a church. It's also not what makes people leave churches. Because church is a very personal thing. I've had enough opportunity of people saying to me, oh, it's nothing personal. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Because church in and of itself is personal. Why? Because we serve a personal God. And so that sting that comes with it, that's part of what also makes what we have sweet. It's the flip side. And so one must be honest with themselves about this. So what is Paul saying here? What Paul is saying here, two simple commands. Number one, welcome Phoebe. Number two, welcome one another. Greet them. That's what Paul is saying as we look at these verbs. He's constantly, you see the key word, greet, 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 greet. Does that mean that you're supposed to buy a whole bunch of Hallmark cards? No, that's not what that means. What he really means is welcome. Welcome Phoebe. Let's talk about Phoebe in verses 1 through 2. Now, Phoebe, for some people, is a very controversial character. And you might already know why, but who is Phoebe? Phoebe is described in verse 1 as a servant of the church at Cenchreae. And by the way, I had to go online and have YouTube tell me how to pronounce that word. Nothing up here, guys. Okay, full disclosure. So that's how you pronounce it, because YouTube told me so. But what does it mean that when it says that she is a servant? Does it mean that she writes down your order? Well, kind of, but not in the way you think. The word diakonos is being used. That's the word for deacon. Now, but wait, Pastor Bill, I'm not the smartest gal, but I've read 1 Timothy chapter 3, and it says that a deacon must be a man of one wife. What gives? Well, first I would say, I don't know exactly. I don't have all the answers, but I do know that she's a deacon, whatever that means. Now, you could use this word in a very general kind of way, because it would be the equivalent of saying a server at a restaurant. When you use the word deacon, it could also be used in a very technical sense, that she is an officer in the church. Glenn, will you go to that quote from Leon Morris, because I wanted everyone to be able to, this is a guy who's on the other side of, he and I don't have the same view. But I think his view really coincides with my view, especially at the end. What he writes in his commentary in the Romans is this. He says, the social conditions of the time were such that there must have been the need for feminine church workers to assist in such matters as the baptism of women, or anything that meant contact with women's quarters in homes. And guys, in a post-Me Too, can you see especially how that's important? Oh yeah, absolutely. Going on, he says, the form of expression here makes it more likely that an official is meant than the more general term servant. Read to the end of the sentence. Though, in view of the wide use of the term for the general concept of service, this is far from being proved. So if this is far from being proved from his advantage, what must I say from my vantage point? It's far from being proved from my vantage point. Okay, so let's just be honest. And in our denomination, in the Presbyterian Church in America, what is our view? Our view is that deacons they must be men. But, and this is the practice throughout our denomination as well, a lot of our churches have deaconesses. What is that? These are women who are trained and who work in and alongside male deacons so that the needs both of men and women are met. Are they ordained? No, they're not ordained. And what would they be ordained for? They would be ordained for showing mercy. Well, doesn't the Bible tell all of us to do that? That's not something that really requires the blessing of the church to do. In many ways, a lot of us should be deaconing a whole lot more so that there's really a church of multiple deacons and not just, say, two. And it's not, and the thing is that as we read in the scriptures, very little is said about a deacon being an unpaid maintenance guy. I mean, that's how people treat deacons. Now, our church at this point does not have them. By the end of 2023, our goal is to have 2 deacons who have been selected, trained, and installed to their office. That is what we need to be praying for, that God would allow us to do that. So I wanted to also let that be known. But what is essential in understanding this passage is not so much that we might know whether Phoebe was or wasn't official, whether she had the stamp. What is more important is that you hear what is Paul saying to the Roman church. He's saying, accept this sister. Help this sister who is from Cenchreae. Oh yes, Cenchreae. Yeah, it's just east of Corinth. So it's a port city. And what do we know about that port city is that a lot of traffic would go in and out. And she was very, very successful in business. I mean, we're talking Zuckerberg successful, okay? She had that kind of money in her world because she had a purple clothing dyeing business that was creme de la creme in their day. It was very much sought after to have these kinds of clothes. And many of these scholars think, she was probably one of the chief of these merchants in that world. And so she was wealthy. She was also she was a patron of the church. She was one of the main supporters in a church that was primarily made up of people who were poverty-stricken. She was an outlier, economically speaking. Can I also say one other thing that every single woman here should emulate about Phoebe? And I don't think there's that much emulation because looking at you, you're already that. She was a strong woman. And every one of you, to a person, you are strong women. And that is what the church has always had. And that is what the church must always have. By the way, we must always have strong men. And that's also a key piece of the business. But here, what's the big take home we should have of this is that these churches were not so focused on just their one neighborhood that they weren't looking at what was going on around them. Now, I forgot to do it in today's pastoral prayer, but how many times have I prayed for Everett Baptist across the street? Some people would say, they're so much bigger than us. Why do they need our prayers? Because they're on our team. Because they're on our side. And we have to have that wider vision. And that's what I love about being a Presbyterian, is that we already think in those terms. We think in terms of teamwork, because that is what it means to be a biblical church. That it's not just, us four close the door. It's much broader than that. Well, that's what we usually say in the Fikes family. Us four, put the drawbridge down, it's the end of the day kind of thing. But that's how a lot of churches look at themselves, like we're the only ones here. And to them, Paul would say, just lift up your nose a little bit, not like in that way, but lift it up a little bit so that you can look around and see what's going on within your community. That's why it's great to be part of Family Promise. That's where you see a Presbyterian kind of ministry taking place, not in doctrine, but in the attitude of having teamwork, of working with one another for a larger goal that is kingdom-focused, that is kingdom-minded. And that is what our presbytery is helping us with in terms of helping us to hone a sharper vision and many other things as well. So this is the greeting. This is just 2 verses, and no, I'm not going to go this far in depth with the other 14 verses. Okay? Yeah, shoe for you, shoe for me too, okay? Because I don't have that much written here on this paper. So what I wanted to do is just transition looking at this idea of greeting Phoebe. Remember, don't claim the credit. Don't look for the credit. That's the big idea. Now, he's going to send greetings to them. Now, he hasn't been there. And yet he knows all these people. Now I've set up 3 slides to where we can start to see who these people were. And this wasn't any rocket science or anything involved. This is just me reading the text and saying, okay, who is Paul greeting, and how does he know them, and are there any further words in terms of their significance in the community? So the first of these that I would point out to you is Prisca and Aquila. Now, these 2, they were also tent makers. Paul knew them because they were in the same business together. You can read that in the book of Acts. You can read about them in other places as well. Now, Prisca was the wife, Aquila the husband, and they were fellow workers. They were missionaries as well. And what's significant about them? Well, they risked their necks for Paul. So that's how they have spent time in mission together. And because they have a life of mission together, they have a life of community together. And folks, that is the key to us becoming more and more tightly bound with one another, is that mission aids community and community aids mission. That's why community groups are so important, because they give us a place where we can meet together, have community with one another, and as we know one another more, we can trust one another more, and we can start to do more and more mission together. And that also has a cyclical effect. As you do more community, you get more mission. As you do more mission, you get more community. So that's Prisca and Aquila. There are several other people that I can list in this. Epaenetus, he was the first, or Epaenetus probably, the first Christian convert. You have Mary. You have Andronicus and Unia. Now, Andronicus' husband, Unia, the wife. There is a little bit of controversy about this. Let me give you what I think is the best understanding of them. Is when you read the passage, it says, it speaks of Unia, depending on how you translate and read the text, it can say, my kinsmen, which probably means that they're Jewish, like he's Jewish, and my fellow prisoners, they are well known to the apostles, and they were in Christ before me. Some people think that the reading should be, they were well known among the apostles. Even if that is the reading you supply, there are other places where you read that Barnabas and other people were considered little a apostles. But the English Standard Version, I think, does the best job as saying that they are well known among the apostles, that they were well known to Peter, to James, to John, to the rest. I think that's the best way to read that passage. And then you have others, Ampliatus, Urbanus, Stachys, Apelles. And then you have the family of Aristobulus. Is that a home church? Probably. You have Herodian. That is someone who was a relative of Herod's family, they think. So you have people that have maybe a higher position socially. You have that with Phoebe, Prisca and Aquila. They were probably middle class. A lot of them would have been lower class in our estimation. Tryphena and Tryphosa, workers, Persis, and then Rufus. Rufus was the name of one of our cats in the Fikes family. But more notably, as you go to the crucifixion narrative of Jesus, and I forgot to look this up, but when Jesus goes and he's walking up to the hill of Golgotha, he drops the cross. And you remember that a man was conscripted to carry the cross for Jesus. And then you read who his sons were, and one of them was Rufus. Well, that's kind of interesting. And the reason why that's interesting is here in Romans, this shows that since this is written to a Roman audience, that Mark was actually written to a Roman audience as well. And so you know that he and his mother, and actually he has a brother who's not mentioned here, who's in this passage, but they are chosen of the Lord. They were known within the church as well. And then you have Asyncritus, Phlegon, Hermes, Patrobas, and then this guy Hermas. There's this book. It's not in the Bible, but it is of the same era, called The Shepherd of Hermas. People believe that he might have written that book that was in many ways like a devotional for the early believers of Jesus Christ. They all met together probably in a home church. You have Philologus, you have Julia, Nereus and his sister, you have Olympus. They are another home church. So you have a collection of these home churches, and Paul is writing to all these people, and he's essentially given a shout out, okay? To all these people. On Facebook, he's tagging you, okay? Paul's tagging all these people. Have you ever seen maybe one of those posts and you're like, how many people does this person know? It's kind of like going grocery shopping with Pam Fikes, where she always meets someone that she knows. We're at the game on Friday. We leave, we're just dog tired. And then we're walking along, and she sees two of the high school students, and she says, "Oh, how are the Porter twins doing this evening?" And I'm like, who doesn't my wife know? Well, if you are in that, if you can appreciate maybe that feeling of exasperation, of, man, I wish I knew more people. That's been something that I have been pursuing, and when I don't think it's going well enough, I get frustrated with. I wanted to just give us some next steps because every one of us should be reaching out to other people. And for some people, that circle may be larger, and for some people, that circle may be smaller. And that's okay, because God gives us all different gifts, but he does call us to certain practices. And though this may not sound the most sophisticated, we need to make sure that we are constantly pushing outward in terms of seeking to meet people. That's why I go to Vienna on multiple times during the week, and I will sit there, and over time I've gotten to meet more and more people. Do you know how that happened? Lots and lots of coffee. Lots and lots of sitting. Also, lots and lots of those moments when I'm like, I've got to meet more people. Smile and say, hi, how's it going? And maybe something will happen. And sometimes that does happen. And more people and more circles develop. So that's something that I wanted to encourage you to do, because we need to be outward facing as a church. We need to be welcoming each other, as Paul says here in this passage, and we need to be genuinely loving one another. In a time of COVID, I think we might be able to, we'll let the holy kiss part, we'll let that slide, okay? Because some people might be yuck poo. The reason, but what is Paul saying in that one verse? He's saying in verse 16, when he says, greet one another with a holy kiss, he's saying, greet and welcome one another in a socially appropriate way. So for us, that might be elbow bumps or fist bumps or whatever denomination you are on that. It might be just saying hi. It might be, this one, that one, okay? It might be that one. Whatever it is, find ways to socially interact with one another and to seek deeply to love one another. Not just up here, not just in principle, but to really, really love one another and say, I can't wait to get to church because I get to see fill in the blank. Because I get hugs. Because I get to hear about what's going on with Patrick this week at the library. What's going on with his son? What's going on with his wife? This is what God wants us to be like. And this isn't easy. I'll admit this. This is not easy for some of us. For some of you, it's natural, and I really envy you. But there's other areas where I'm strong, where you may not be. But I just have these down as some action points. Go where people go, and go there constantly. Second, pray for your neighbors. There are mechanisms for doing that. There's an app you can get online called Bless Your Neighbors, where you can actually type in your address, and they will basically let you adopt 40 of your neighbors, and every day they will send you a list of 5 of them. They'll even send you a prayer, and they'll send you tutorial guides on how to reach out to your neighbors. Also, there is a link that I've put on our Facebook page. Now, the Art of Manliness is not a denomination, okay? It is simply a podcast. And they have a lot of very useful things like how to do the right sit-ups or how to do the right push-up. But they also have a lot of stuff on how to lead a worship service with your family at home. They also have how to cook, how to make a fire. And I put a podcast on there on Facebook of how to meet people, how to greet people, how to expand the circle of people who are all around you. And so I wanted to encourage you to go there, just check it out. It's about a 43-minute podcast. It's just something that's a secular resource. It's not canon, but it is useful. And so whenever I can bring something useful to you, I want to let you see that. So those are the things that I see in this passage. He's closing through this letter. But he doesn't forget the people, because the people are what make the church.